And no, that was not a beer.
I don't believe you. But with that, I will say that it is 7 o'clock, so we do have a quorum. In fact, we have a full house, and so I will go ahead and start the meeting. And with every meeting started these days, I'll start with the COVID-19 information on remote meetings. So, good evening. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access Channel, and this meeting of the Finance Committee is being conducted remotely. The town of Lunenburg, in response to the COVID-19, is currently following the guidance from the Lunenburg Board of Health, Massachusetts Department of Public Health, and the CDC regarding the virus and steps communities can take to prevent the spread. The order, which you can find posted on the town website on the COVID-19 Information Center page, accessed through the town manager's webpage, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless the participation is required by law. This meeting does feature public comment. If through your participation you aren't able to participate through Zoom, you are welcome to, or by phone, you're welcome to send an email to tbirchfield, BURCHFIELD, at lunenburgonline.com. And if I have a mail in my mailbox by the end of the meeting, we will read it at the second public comment. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. So please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. If we do take any votes during the course of the meeting, they will be by roll call. And with that, I'll open it up. Basically, just first, I just want to welcome our new members, Chris Menard and Heather Soroka. I won't put you on the spot, but and I haven't started public comment yet, Dave. But you're ready.
Anticipation.
So, I guess so. So first I'll start then with, do we have any public comments from anybody on the committee? And I see Dave's hand, so we'll go to Dave.
Thank you, Terry.
Mr. Patrick.
First of all, I'd also like to welcome our two new members this evening. Should be an exciting year. Heather, you've got your feet wet over the past few years with town financial situation and more on the school side, but here we go. Now we're on the town side. And a little bit looking at the school. Chris Menard, welcome. We've been trying to nudge you into town government, and I'm thrilled to see you here. That's my initial comment in regards to the new membership. One other quick thing I would like to bring attention to the Finance Committee. Some good news finally on the charter. As of today's action by the House of Representatives, the charter has gone through a second reading and ordered to a third reading, which means it should be coming out of the House of Representatives very soon. It has one step left in the Senate, and then it comes to the town clerk to be posted. So I'm hoping personally that we see the charter in effect very soon. Thank you. I'm done for the moment.
Okay. Does anyone else on the committee have a public comment? I don't see a lot of public, but does anybody from the public have a public comment? Seeing none, then we'll move right on. At this point, we typically hear the town manager and or the finance director report. And I understand that you don't have much of a report, but I would like to actually raise a question that, and I don't know if you can address it or not, based on Tuesday night's Board of Selectmen meeting. It sounds like part of the budget consideration or discussion may involve some action around the Lunenburg Primary School, the old one, the old primary school. Oh. So, and I don't know if you feel prepared to speak to that at all yet, or if you want to put that on hold for a bit until you have a chance to actually chew on that. But with that, yeah. So, any update would be great.
So the board is still reviewing their goals for next year, but sounds like the old primary schools. That's going to be a continuation of their goal, and with the understanding that it would be a request for funding, but not until the annual town meeting of May.
Okay. Any other update from the town manager or finance director?
Unfortunately, I don't have any news regarding the state budget. That's what I would have liked to have reported on, but nothing yet.
Does anybody have any questions for Heather at this time? Nobody does, so we can just move right on to the next agenda item. We're just going to fly through this, and then you guys are just looking forward to get 3 weeks off, I can just tell, because there's 3 weeks between now and the next meeting. Now is the time for a committee reorganization. So I know that you've been spending the last couple of weeks just thinking of just exactly what role you would like to take on the finance committee. So why don't we go ahead and start with, we need a chair, we need a vice chair, and we need a secretary or clerk. So with that, is there any discussion or motions anybody wanted to make in regards to, or any interest anybody wanted to express in any of the board positions?
I would nominate Terry Birchfield for chair.
I would second.
Does anybody else want it? This is why Michelle left, I think. She knew that it was her. No other nominations for the board chair?
I move we close nominations for chair.
I'll second
Are
that.
you okay with that?
I'm okay with that. So with that, then we'll take a vote on Terry Birchfield as chair. John?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
Heather?
Aye.
Chris? Aye. Jay?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Okay, aye for me, I guess. Okay. I just like a unanimous vote. I like to be able to have that on my resume.
Yeah.
Do we have any interest or nominations in the position for vice chair?
I'd like to make a motion to nominate Peter Beardmore for vice chair.
I'd like
Do I
to
have a
second that
second?
motion. John Henshaw,
Okay.
second.
So I have a motion and a second. Do I have any discussion or any other nominations or interest? Jay's going to look at Peter and say, Peter, are you interested?
Peter, you okay with that?
Yes, I would gladly accept.
Okay.
Okay, then with that, we'll go ahead and move to vote on the motion to have Peter Beardmore as vice chair. And I'll go to John.
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
Heather?
Aye.
Chris? Aye. Jay?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
And aye for myself. So that's a unanimous vote as well. With that, we move on to the clerk position. Do we have any expression of interest, motions, or discussion on that?
What is
I
the
know
role?
John said the role, it's basically the secretary. Actually, the secretary or clerk or whatever we deem it to be takes the minutes of all the meetings and posts the minutes as they're approved.
This isn't
And the other stuff.
the school committee anymore, Heather, where you get somebody.
I
doing it
know,
for you.
I know. I wanted to make sure I knew what the role was. Because you know, we had a secretary only for certain parts of the meeting. And that usually was the low man on the totem pole. And I understand that Chris thinks that I'm the low man on the totem pole because I got sworn in after him.
Oh, you were late to the town hall.
Yeah. I will take that role.
You will take that role.
I will
Okay.
take the role if no one else wants to do it.
I'll second that volunteerism.
Well, we can start with tourism, so let's take a motion first. So,
I'll make a motion to nominate Heather Soroka as clerk of the finance committee.
And I will
I'll second
second that.
did that? Okay, so then, all in favor, John,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Heather,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Jay,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
and I for myself. I will say that we tend to televise all of our meetings these days, even if they're not Zoom meetings. Part of the reason for that is it makes it easier to keep up with the minutes, because it's, especially during budget season, it's hard to participate in the discussions and get the information down. So, Peter, thank you for your yeoman's work.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I still, even despite today's flurry of email, which we'll talk about shortly, I'm sure, I still have a few meetings to clean up. There were some missing from YouTube, so we'll get that cleaned up in the next week or two, before the next meeting.
Okay, very good. Then with that, actually, we might want to go, I guess we should probably go back to the minute.
We should probably do committee assignments, shouldn't we?
Yeah, I know. I already took this out of order, so.
Oh, well, now that we're there.
I am so out of order. Okay, let's do committee assignments. Let me go through the list. Actually, it was good of Chris to ask for a copy of the minutes where those committees were originally set up for liaisons, so that I could refresh my memory on what we thought we were going to do last year at this time before everything fell apart. So with that, I guess what I'll do is just go around first and just ask people currently on the committee which areas they're liaisoning with and whether or not you feel like you're ready to move on to a different assignment, and then invite the new members to identify people that they want to be in touch with. Or if you prefer, I could just go through a list and bring up item by item and what that may ensue. So, Dave?
No, how do you do it?
Yep. I've got a couple of notes down here on my assignments. I would like to stay with the TC Passios Design Committee. And I believe it would be better for somebody that has daytime availability to cover fire and police. I don't feel I did them justice this past year. So I'd like to pass that on to someone else who's got a little bit more time and is in town a little bit more. And then unofficially, I liaison with Parks and Cemetery, where I'm now a commissioner on Parks. I'd like to continue with that, and cemeteries just so that they have a voice in the finance committee. And those were informal liaisons.
Okay. Anyone else want to speak to, actually, let me go to John. John, you've been on the capital planning committee. Is that something that you would want to keep, or?
Well, actually, yesterday, Dave and I had a conversation about the capital planning committee, and I've been so impressed with his strategic approach to capital planning that I'd like to at least get off the capital planning committee and pass the baton on to somebody who has a more strategic approach. So.
And I neglected to add that to my list because I wanted John to, verify his desire to pass it on. I am very interested.
And I am very interested in passing it on.
If the committee sees fit.
Yeah, I guess, we should probably talk about that, just because basically of those, the capital planning committee and the TC Passios committee are both committee assignments. Those are different than liaisoning. Those are basically you're representing the finance committee on each of those committees. Right. So as long as the rest of the finance committee is okay with that, I'm not sure that because they're two different capital projects, whether it might be something that we should think about. But I'll leave it open to the committee to go with however you folks want to do it. I'm just basically pointing that out.
If I may, just real quick, at this point, TCP is not a capital project. It will be somewhere down the road, at which time, there may be a need or a desire for somebody else to move into the position. But right now it is a funded from the budget project to bring a proposal forward. It is not a capital project. What's going on right now?
Okay. Then Ashley, and again, because I'm not doing anything in order tonight, I think what I'd like to do is take those two positions right now, because those are the only positions that the committee should take a vote on to appoint, because we're appointing our representative to that committee to act for the committee. So,
Terry, could I make a suggestion?
sure.
I think maybe we should kind of go through the list of all of the roles, all the liaison positions,
Okay.
kind of see what people are interested in. Perhaps, we find that there's somebody who's, doesn't have anything else or whatever, and just kind of see what the spread is before we vote on anything. I think might be, I'd be more comfortable with it that way.
That's fine. Okay, so basically, over the past year, we had liaisoning with the Green Communities Task Force, the capital planning committee was an appointment. The library committee, which did not have a formal liaison. The Council on Aging, which also did not have a formal liaison.
Did anybody have Green Communities?
I'm sorry?
Did anybody have Green Communities?
I don't believe
Jay
so.
had it.
I had. for a
Oh,
while.
Jay did?
Okay.
Okay.
And then, okay, so Council on Aging, the Police and Fire, Dave was liaisoning with. At that point, I was on the Land Acquisition Committee, and that's not existing right now. DPW, that was Peter. School Committee was Peter. Also Monty Tech, but I don't know if you had any contact with Monty Tech, since that's not that's really pretty peripheral. Sewer Committee, which didn't require a liaison. I guess that's what we had decided at the last meeting. The Planning Board does not have a liaison. Michelle was working with the Association of Town Finance Committees. She was on the board of that, so she was bringing that information back. And the Parks Commission, Dave Passios was an informal direct participant, whatever that meant.
I'm sorry, what was the last one, Terry?
Yeah.
Parks. It was Parks, Peter.
Parks.
Yeah.
Parks. So I guess then we'll just go through that. Is there, and I also, if you think of another committee or department that we should give a little bit more attention to this year that's not on the list, feel free to bring it up.
So I just wanted to mention, first of all, I think it would be great if we could cover all of this, but even with a full board, that's a lot to cover, and which is why we didn't do it last year. In terms of the time that I had available in attending meetings, I did dedicate nearly all of it to attending school committee meetings and reporting back. I was less successful with the DPW and certainly not at all with Monty Tech. I'm not sure that Monty Tech requires a liaison,
No.
but I do think, particularly going into the next year where Jack has announced his retirement, time and date to be determined, I do think that that's a position that probably will require some time and attention, which is more than I'm. And the other reality is that it's kind of outside my wheelhouse. in terms of topics that I'm readily conversant in. So I'd like to see that staffed by somebody else who is perhaps more competent in that world.
Police will be in the same situation with Chief Marino stepping down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
That's
agree.
true.
Can you speak a little bit, like, what are those roles for they're not the board,
Basically,
the departments?
it's basically to act as someone for a department head to check in with if there's something coming up or there's a concern expressed. Like Chief Sullivan would typically give us a heads up that there was a part about to fail on the fire engine and he might be looking for a reserve account transfer down the road. Or as we come into budget season, it might be someone who's looking for some assistance for guidance with how to present their budget request in the most effective way possible, given what the potential questions on the committee might be, or from the public, just based on what we've seen over time. It might be just from time to time, just checking in and saying, yeah, or just being aware that something's coming down the road. And again, it's like, okay, so Tuesday night, the Board of Selectmen started talking seriously about Lunenburg, the old primary building. And it's like, is that something that we need to keep in mind as we look at some of the other things coming down the pike? So it's really just for us to be aware of what's going on town-wide, and for people in the town to, feel like when they're not available to be at a meeting, if somebody asks a question about something going on, there might be somebody on the committee with some information. So I know when I was liaisoning with the police and fire, from probably once a month, I'd send them an email and say, hey, anything up? We've got a meeting coming up. So, and that's pretty much, it is what you make of it and what it seems to need to be. And sometimes with, although Heather and Karen are great about bringing the department heads on financially, I think it might just be in terms of helping guide people in terms of what the public might be looking for from them in terms of what their budget presentations might look like, or what questions the public might need answers to in order to vote yay or nay on something. So that's basically it. Unless people have done it differently, that's basically how I've done it. And then sometimes I'll go and I'll actually look at stuff and if I'm, the first year I think I was on Council on Aging because I knew nothing about it and nobody else picked it up, so that I learned about the Eagle House. It wasn't a place that I went. So it's basically just a way to learn the town. So with that, does anybody have an interest in any particular committees that they would like to liaison with, or do we want to discuss whether or not we want to have liaisons with all of the lists? Again, Green Communities Task Force, I think it would have been a big deal this year to have a little bit more information on the streetlight situation and what the discussions were well in advance of, like that might have been something that should have been prompted to go to capital planning, I think, but it didn't. So, it's one of those, you just don't know what's coming down the pike. So, John, what are your thoughts? Do you have any?
Well, actually, was that a dig?
No, it was not.
I mean,
I wasn't sure if you were just going to be quiet over there, so I didn't assign you to something.
no, actually, I was thinking about matching, at least letting you all know that I have possibly more daytime openings than anyone else on the committee because I'm retired. So matching that, oops, nope. Heather joins me. Okay, fine. So anyway, that you may want to match me to something that other people might not be able to get to as religiously.
how you feel about it, but I know that, because one of the things that was running through my head, unless somebody new coming in is interested in picking up the DPW piece, I know that you started there with the DPW piece, so you have a good sense of what goes on over there.
Well,
But
yes, I would be happy to take DPW, but I do not want to preemptively take DPW out from under somebody who was queued up for it mentally.
sure. Peter, what are you queued up for?
Right now, I'm queued up for school committee in my own mind. And obviously we have a former two-term school committee member on the board. So I think that is probably deserving of some consideration. Although she may just be so sick of it, she doesn't, she wants something else. I don't know.
No, I think you should stay on there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I, as most of you know, Chris and Heather, I'm not sure to what extent you've monitored our meetings in the last few meetings. I have taken on an assignment of leading sort of a working group for the debt and looking at making some reporting, if not recommendations, to the town over the course of the next several months. I think that's going to be a closed-end project, but is going to be a pretty substantial time commitment. We'll talk about it later on, but that's something that John and Dave have also offered to help out with and have already extended their support. So, I'm happy to serve in any capacity. I just want to be careful about, making sure that we're not, in doing so, I'm not leaving something off, such as DPW, that did not get the proper attention that it deserved last year.
Okay. Heather?
Me? I think that Peter should stay on school committee. I think he asks different questions, and I think they need to hear from Peter. I did sit on capital planning for 5 years when I was on school committee. So if we think that Dave is overextending himself with all of his extensive list of everything he wants to sit on, I would take capital planning. I did sit on it with John for many years.
Mm-hmm.
I would take the, do we know when DPW meets, Peter?
They don't meet.
What do they meet?
No,
It's just being a,
yeah, so it's kind of a weird thing because you're essentially a liaison with the director of the DPW. Interestingly, the DPW has oversight and responsibility to cemetery and parks, but those both have commissions to which we have historically assigned a separate liaison as well. So, Dave is obviously now an elected member of the Parks Commission. So, I don't, and another thought might be that might be somewhat redundant, because of the overlap with cemetery and parks as well.
right. And police and fire, it's the same, they don't meet, right? It's just the same thing? Okay.
Right, it's basically just sitting down with, or getting in touch with them and sitting down with them to meet with them at the beginning of the season, and
Okay.
checking in.
And I know nothing about capital on aging, so if I want to learn about that, I would take that.
Okay.
Okay. But I want to give other people the opportunity. I could do, I'm available during the day, and I'd prefer to do things during the day. Other capital planning, I don't remember. When did that meet?
5 p.m.
Early afternoon?
5 p.m.
5 p.m., right?
Just
Okay.
just before the Board of Selectmen's meetings usually.
Yeah. Okay.
So another item of note here is the Association of Town Finance Committees is something that, Michelle frequently brought back some valuable information just in terms of state level activity and that kind of thing, which we may want to make sure that we get staffed.
Yeah.
Okay. let's go back to Chris.
Yeah, Chris, what do you want?
I would be interested in police and fire or DPW. I get every other Friday off, so as long as that's not an issue. And to be honest with you, I'm going to be probably working from home for quite a while. I'm not touching parks with a 10-foot pole for obvious reasons.
I wonder why.
They may not have me for obvious reasons. And I don't know much about Associated Town Finance Committees, but it does seem like if it's a learning opportunity, that would be great.
Yeah.
So those would be my thoughts. Oh, also, planning board, I do talk with Matt Allison quite often, so I could certainly, have at least that discussion with their chairman, if that would be worked.
Okay. Jay?
Jay's muted.
Jay, you're muted.
Sorry, the
There he
dogs were barking.
Oh, that's where the dog
I'll
was.
stick with-
Okay.
Green communities.
Green
I'm sorry, you
community.
broke up for me.
I think you said green community, right, Jay?
What?
We missed what you said. You broke up.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll stick with green communities task force.
Okay.
I closed the list. I don't have the list open anymore.
So
all right,
what was?
then with that,
Do you want it?
I'm sorry.
Do you want the list? Where'd she go?
Do I want the list?
Do you want the list? I have it.
It's broken up.
Yeah. Yeah,
Sure.
everyone's breaking up. Okay, so it was green community, and Jay said we could do that. We have capital planning, library committee, council on aging, police and fire, DPW, school committee, but not Monty Tech, sewer committee, but we said there was no real need, planning board, and parks. And then there is the TC Passios building committee, right?
Right.
And then the statewide finance committee that Chris expressed interest in.
Okay.
In capital.
Michelle.
Did you say capital?
Yeah, and yeah, I did say capital. Yeah.
All right. And basically, the Chris, I can discuss with you the Association for Town Finance Committees later. I think basically there's, unless anybody has a quick access to the link, Heather would probably be interested as well. They typically have, I say typically like we're in a regular time and you're going to be able to go and attend a big regional training at the Association of Town Finance Committees. But basically they put on an orientation for Town Finance Committee members. They also have regularly scheduled trainings that occur. Michelle was even more involved in that she ran for the board for the Association of Town Finance Committee, so she got a lot of she had an opportunity for a lot of networking that way as well. So there is a lot to it. Not that they had a whole lot of guidance around, like how best to plan for the budget season that COVID brought us. But, basically it came back with, nobody knows what to do. So, we're just all flying by the seat of our pants. But certainly I'd be happy to share more information about that with anybody interested. I think with that, again, I'll go back to there's only 2 committees that we need votes on. So I guess at this point, I would go back to the Capital Planning Committee and entertain a motion as to an appointment on that. We've lost Jay.
Yeah, he left.
So maybe we'll wait until Jay comes back. And
The other
then
one requires vote?
and I'm going to just switch gears again and go back to, all right, so basically in terms of the police, fire, and DPW, we have Chris interested. And Heather, did you say you were interested, or you would prefer the Council on Aging?
I'll do Council on Aging and the library.
Okay.
Said there was a library.
Yeah, and it's not something that we staffed last year, so that'd be great too.
Okay.
Right, and I will say that the library once, I want to say that they typically meet in the evening, and one of their meetings in the month, I think, falls on the same night as one of our finance
Yeah.
committee. So I would basically, when I was trying to liaison with them, I tended to miss a lot of their meetings because we were meeting. So, and then I would miss the other meetings because I would have the wrong night because I think they switched their nights. But they'd probably appreciate having a liaison back.
Michelle spent quite a bit of time with the library because she was researching what outside
fund.
funds were supporting library and other functions in town. So she did spend quite a bit of time with the library. And I think that should continue.
Yeah.
Right. There was that, and actually there was a focus on, one of her focuses was on how many outside funds were used to fund activities of many of our departments. And the same is true of the Council of Aging, which basically I think Michelle took an interest with that as well.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of external grants that are sought to run a lot of their programs.
I will say if I could, on the capital planning, that will not, it's totally up to this committee, who you want to send to represent as a representative there, but it will not overtax me schedule wise and fits into my Tuesday nights very well. I'll leave it at that and let the committee decide from there.
Okay, thanks, Peter.
Terry, you had, when land acquisition came up, you had said something to the effect of that wasn't good or something, and we didn't close the loop on that. Did you have an opinion on land acquisition?
No. It was just that was just a short termer.
Okay. So
that was like basically that was.
So that's not a standing role. That's on an ad hoc basis is basically it. And we would appoint our representative given an ad hoc circumstance.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they saw the Saliba Brothers property and they said, "Let's go." And basically, it originated from the Open Space Committee requesting the land acquisition committee, and the whole function of the land acquisition committee was just to negotiate a we did
negotiate a deal.
Yeah.
But we appointed you to that on an ad hoc basis. Was that how we did that?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Nobody else wanted it. And I couldn't imagine why. There were hikes involved. It was awesome. Expert grade. I don't know how anybody would want to pass that up, but yeah, nobody else wanted to do that. So
okay. So I've got names with the exception of capital and TCP. I've got a name next to everything, except one thing of note is that I now have Chris next to 4 different things.
4, yeah.
So all of them.
So I just want to call attention to that.
No.
Yeah. Well, no, we want to inundate him because he took so long making up his mind to say yes. So
and we also do not have. We also right now do not have John assigned to anything.
Yeah.
If Chris wants to share one of his or one or two of his, I'd be willing to upload.
Yeah, I wasn't necessarily saying I wanted all of those, but it was just what might.
Oh, you open your mouth around here.
Yeah.
You're saying.
You're a
That's
dead
how
man.
it works on committees, bud.
Actually, the other thing that we don't have, and I don't know, and it's probably worth discussing whether we want it, is we do not have, and it just came up because of the whole land acquisition question. We don't have anything to do with the Conservation Commission.
That was,
Well, so my view on this is that land acquisition is probably the closest thing we would ever have in terms of what's applicable to Finance Committee with Conservation Committee. I also, given the experiences that we've had now with 2 town meetings over the course of the last year, where there were planning board articles brought forth, the position of this committee in those circumstances has been no financial impact on everything that they brought forth. I was in the minority a couple of times on that, but I'm just wondering if it's something that we want to put out an effort when the majority of the opinions on this board, at least historically, have been that what they do on an item per item basis does not have a whole lot of financial impact.
I think the other thing that's hard is I'll let other people speak to this. I think my take on the whole thing with the planning committee is we absolutely, and I'm not sure why they didn't include the finance committee membership as part of the business development committee that they're trying to get.
Economic development, yeah.
Yeah, the economic development committee. I don't know. Like, to me, I think that in terms of the planning committee for the purpose of strategic planning for the town, I think that the finance committee probably has a better role. The bylaw stuff is, frankly, by the time I see it, I have a hard time trying to turn each of those items into. I just can't. It's so micro that that I have a tough time with it. And so I really just look for what's the long term, what's the big impact to the budget.
I'm just throwing it out there because they have extremely long meetings. So
they do.
If we're going to ask a member of our committee to be a liaison, that's not a small commitment if you're actually doing it.
No.
So for whatever that's worth, I'm not volunteering. I'm just throwing out a
no, Chris already volunteered to keep up with Matt in terms of what's coming down the pike. But I think that what you say makes a lot of sense, and I think that it would probably be in our interest to as they're leading up to, or we get a headwind on whether or not there's bylaw changes coming up that they're starting to have public meetings around. Then it would be good to attend to those, whether it's by watching them or just to become better informed with all the questions and issues that might be coming up as they're coming forward. And that's tough for an individual to come back to the board as the liaison for. I think that especially the bylaw, in particular the bylaw information. But no, I see your point, and I think that planning. And I really wish planning would, and I don't know, Chris, if you're the least bit interested, or I know, Peter, you had expressed an interest in the economic redevelopment or the economic development committee. I'm sure they're still looking for members, and I don't know whether it makes sense to have someone from the finance committee attend those.
Yeah, it might be worth tabling that discussion, and maybe Chris and I have separate conversations with Matt and see what's going on there. Kind of
and I wasn't interested in joining another committee. I was just saying that I do frequently talk with Matt, and I agree their meetings can go on marathon. So I'm not interested in everyone, but
nope.
Okay. So if I could just share an opinion in terms of the two that we need to vote on. Seeing as we have I think a pretty well rounded out list now. I think that I personally am comfortable with Dave representing the finance committee in both capacities. I think that if somebody has a strong opinion that they'd like to serve in one of those roles, it should be considered. Particularly the capital planning, because I think that the continuity on the TC Passios committee is of the utmost importance. And seeing that project through in some kind of short time horizon. But I would certainly be completely happy also assigning Dave to the capital planning committee.
Do I have any other discussion on that? No? Okay. Well, then with that, I'm happy to entertain a motion for both seats. And again, you know, like if people don't have a particular issue or concern about that, I'm happy to go with the pleasure of the board. So, do I have a motion?
I move that we appoint Dave Passios to the Capital Planning Committee and reappoint him to the TC Passios Building Planning Committee.
I will second that motion.
Okay, any discussion on that motion? Okay, all in favor? John,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Heather,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
I think
We'll
we're
give
actually
Jay a minute.
getting
Wait.
Jay back.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, Jay,
Yes.
all right, basically,
Oh.
there is a motion on the table. We're in the middle of voting for Dave Passios to be appointed to the Capital Planning Committee and reappointed to the TC Passios Design Committee. And we're in the process of voting. Do we have a yay or nay from you?
Aye.
And I for myself. So that takes care of those two committees.
You're all set now?
Yes.
Get your tech support there, Jay?
Hi, Joanna.
Yeah. I mean, the internet blind to Comcast.
I wasn't sure where that voice was coming from. But, pretty funny. And then and again, you know, like I'm happy. I noticed that I managed to skip and avoid getting myself on any committees going through the list or on any liaison functions. So I'm happy to help out with, or we can talk about it later if something else comes up that that might require some assistance. Yes, Chris.
I
What would
was
you like to give up?
waving to Joanna.
You wave. Oh, I didn't see Joanna's hand.
Terry, we'll give you cookie
Uh,
detail.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so easy to delegate if we're ever in person again.
Yeah.
Dave brought cookies to my house last night for what it's worth.
Really?
Ah! John, I see your hand.
Well, I don't believe I have any committee assignments. I'm not complaining about that, but it seems a little bit inequitable because Chris has, I believe, 3 or 4.
Yeah, no, Chris does not have 4. We need to like,
He does. He
Okay.
has fire
I
police.
just
Yeah,
don't
I
want-
think basically the question is, do you want to maintain the relationships with the fire, police, and DPW?
you in that sentence.
Yeah, I would recommend that you split those roles.
Yeah, 2 and 2.
So if there's one that you feel like more likely or more that you want to, and you and John can you know, like basically talk about this and at the next meeting come back with a split on that, unless you want to do it right this very minute.
do you have a preference on one? It's a coin toss for me.
I have no preference. I've enjoyed liaising with DPW as well as with police and fire. So, your choice.
I can try DPW.
You will give me DPW?
Sure.
Okay, fine. So I'll get in touch with Jack.
All right, so just to be clear, John has DPW, Chris has police and fire, because I'm not sure I heard that correctly.
No,
I thought I heard it the other way around.
Okay,
I
Oh,
thought you were going to give him DPW. Chris, that's no.
I can
Chris,
take-
you're keeping DPW.
But I can
Sounds
take
confused.
DPW.
Okay,
Chris,
okay, let me,
Okay,
Chris, since you break up every time you say it, can you just, in the chat, can you just
I know.
indicate whether you are taking or giving up DPW?
No, I'll take DPW.
Okay,
We got
Okay.
it.
All right, so John will take
I will
police and
take
fire.
police and fire.
all right.
Fine. Thank you.
Thanks for that clarification, because I was going the complete other way, so.
All right.
John and I have been around too long. That's our problem.
Yeah, pretty much anything we
Well-
say now, John and Terry can be like, been there, done that. I can tell you how it's done.
All right, so that takes care of that. If we do have any more committees that anyone thinks of that we need to spend some time talking about, we can certainly address that. But I think we might be, we'll see how the fall goes anyway. I'm sure that we'll be hearing a lot about all of the departments in town for the next several months. With that, I'm going to then go back to minutes because there were a lot of minutes.
Yeah.
We're
We're almost getting caught up now. So again, as I said at the last meeting, I apologize that this stuff is coming in kind of last minute and haywire. John was extremely helpful in sharing with me a ton of notes, really for all 3 meetings in May. And Heather offered some edits, which I appreciate during the day today. So I've sent over the course of the day today revised minutes for May 7th, 14th, and 28th. The only issue with the 28th was we had the wrong date on them. It was the 28th, not the 20th. And some minor.
Actually, let's go back to the 28th because there was something else on the 28th.
Okay.
Michelle was not present.
On the 28th?
That's correct. Yeah, I went back and I double checked just before the meeting just to see which day it was that she wrote to me and said that she wasn't going to be available.
Okay.
And it was that, and that's why in the minutes you'll see I had commented about Michelle maybe having something to report coming back from.
All right. I am noting that
the only
right now.
we got.
I will make that
Okay.
amendment right now.
Okay, so with that then, if people had a chance to review them, I'm happy to take a motion on the minutes of May 7th, 14th, and 28th.
There's 2 others that I've circulated. But I don't know if people, I did them in the last 2 hours, so I don't know if people got a chance to look at them, but we could table those.
Yeah, no, I've looked at
I
them,
haven't
but
seen
I
any of
just
them.
wanted to take the approval. Yeah. I just thought I'm sorry, Jay, what did you say?
I haven't had a chance to look at any of them.
Okay. We
Dave,
could
did you
table
have a
them.
chance to look at-
We could table them.
We might table them. Dave, did you see them?
I saw the ones that were sent earlier today.
Okay. So we
All right,
could.
so you might not have seen the read.
Okay, but we can probably, that'll give us the ability to at least vote on, although I sent out revisions on those, if you can
Yeah.
read these other revised versions. So let's, why don't we table those, Terry, and then we'll have the
Yep.
full slate. We can vote on them in a few weeks.
Okay, I'll try to remember to put them on the agenda for the next time.
Okay.
All right, so debt discussion, Peter?
Yeah. So following our last meeting when we determined that we're not a subcommittee, but I am leading a working group. First of all, one of the things that came to my attention today in working on some minutes was something that I had overlooked, which was a public comment that was made by Carl Luck several weeks ago about inviting any public participation in this effort. So since this is being recorded and I think on television live, I just wanted to offer to any member of the public who is interested in getting involved in looking at the town debt and helping us to determine how best to present the situation to the town at special town meeting and potentially make recommendations to fiscal policy. Please get in touch with me through my town email or any other means that you can, Facebook or what have you. I will also reach out directly to Carl, and I have another member of the public here in Lunenburg that I intend to inquire for their help as well on a couple of things. to that end, Dave and John and I met informally yesterday to discuss the project. And if you recall, there were basically 4 things that we were charged with. The first was to examine the potential scenarios, the costs, and the timelines associated with several debt projects that we have projected as potential debt projects, and to bring that to bear in terms of our deliberations. And so yesterday we went through the process of, first of all, validating that those are the projects that we want to at least inquire about, and determining who are the right people to go and inquire for that information. So suffice to say, we together determined that the old primary school, TC Passios, Turkey Hill, 635 Mass Ave, and potentially Town Hall and Ritter repurposing could be considered as part of that project. And so I am now in the process of reaching out to, and the town manager and Karen will hear from me on a few of these in the next 24 hours, but reaching out to who we think is the most authoritative person in each one of those areas to help us to bracket what these potentially look like. And recognizing the fact that, stuff like Turkey Hill, for example, is, you could throw a dart at a wall, but we need something to throw out there just for illustrative purposes, if for anything else, to move to stage 2. Stage 2 is to examine the effects of potential borrowing on both the operating budget, if the borrowing is non-excluded, and tax bills, if the borrowing is excluded. So keeping in mind that if you're doing regular borrowing, that debt service is automatically deducted from your discretionary funds for operating purposes, whereas an excluded debt project is basically added to people's tax bills. And so we think we need to be able to, using some likely scenarios for at least a few of those projects, be able to show what they look like in both areas. And for that project, once we've gotten past phase 1, we'll be reaching out to Karen in particular, and also the town manager for help in doing that and determining what our likely borrowing costs may be, and also what, how that would likely amortize over a period of 7, 20, 30 years. Then the next phase after that, and some of these will happen concurrently, is to examine the effects of potential borrowing on bond ratings and the cost of future borrowing. And we believe that this is going to require the involvement of the town financial advisor, which is something that we'll need to likely schedule in advance through the town manager. And our discussion last night was, at that point, we might want to consider making that part of a finance committee meeting, and kind of bringing that portion of the discussion forth, putting it within the purview of the finance committee, having the discussion so that it's available to the public, and then pulling it back out for further consideration. And so the time frame on that, we didn't nail down, but I think in all likelihood, we're probably looking at late September, early October, to where we'd probably be ready to have that discussion with the town financial advisor. And then the final stage, and it's not really the final stage, because at some point we'll need to report either to the Board of Selectmen and or town meeting and make this information available through some sort of means of reporting. To examine the fiscal policy in light of all the above items and make recommended changes if applicable. And just so everybody understands, the current fiscal policy with respect to debt requires that our regular borrowing not exceed 4% of our levy capacity. in terms of debt service. These are all debt service, and that our excluded debt not exceed 11% of the total budget per policy, and that the combined debt service not exceed 14%. And today we're, pretty comfortably below all of those levels. The problem is that, we're going to see roughly a third of our drop in excludable debt service in 2025. But then it's relatively flat after that. So if we're looking at bringing on, substantial borrowing with respect to TCP and or Turkey Hill, we may very well bump into those numbers, and that's something that we're going to have to consider and talk through in some detail as the information becomes clearer than it is now. And from there, and this is something that John brought up in a previous meeting, when the fiscal policies were put into place about 7 years ago, there was never a plan to review the fiscal policies on a regular basis. And John has recommended that, number one, we take it upon ourselves to bring a full fiscal policy recommendation back to the Board of Selectmen this year. And with that, an additional recommendation to put us on a 5-year or some kind of process that we're reviewing these policies on a regular basis. I don't know if that will be part of the debt project. I think it's probably, once we come to debt recommendations, I think a lot of these will affect other policies, but it's something that I think we need to be kind of clear-eyed around. But also not necessarily tied to a town meeting milestone or anything along those lines. I think it's something that we should be looking to accomplish as a committee goal for the current fiscal year.
Well, it sounds like you guys are busy. Sounds good. And I guess the in terms of the other fiscal policies, and I don't know whether it makes sense to wait until after we get into the fall, because the one part of it is looking at the debt policy, but the other is looking at all of the fiscal policies and their effect on debt, meaning that, again, that if we don't do certain items within our policies, that what effect will that have on our rating, if any? So I think that would be another reason to take a look at that. John, I see your hand.
Well, with respect to the other fiscal policies, I agree with you. There's nothing that I know of that really is making that review urgent. It's just that if in fact we have to fit around with the debt, we have to change the debt policy, we may want to just at the same time examine if there are any implications to other fiscal policies. I don't know. I don't know if there are. I don't suspect there are, but I think we ought to, at least for completeness, review them.
Let me just give you a scenario. So let's say, for example, the TCP project goes forth, and we realize that somewhere in the second half of this decade, we're also going to be, incurring debt to deal with Turkey Hill in one fashion or another, which I think is a likely scenario. And we're bumping up or exceeding those limits that we have in place, and in doing so, realize that that's going to affect our cost of borrowing. There might be a need to put more money or add to our obligations for some of the stabilization accounts or what have you in terms of our regular budgeting process. And the other thing that John mentioned yesterday that I'd add is some of our policies, such as $100,000 to OPEB or that sort of thing, those were never adjusted for inflation. So in some cases we've got a dollar amount in a policy that was put into place 7 years ago, but had never adjusted it. So I think that that's something that deserves attention as well.
And just to give you a specific, even our revenue say increases 2.5% per year, say inflation increases 2% per year. It's the policies were put in place about 6 years ago. That's a 12% increase, non-compounded, so 13 and 14% compounded. So $100,000 becomes 114, then becomes $114,000 right now. And part of the one goal of when we were constructing the policies 7 years ago, one goal was to make sure they did not constrain the ability of the town to govern us financially.
All right. Okay. Well, thanks for the info. I think it'll be good to have some discussions along the way. And I would also just ask if there's anyone that has any questions about any of the items that Peter has talked about, especially if you're new to the committee. And I'm not going to assume that anybody watching understands the difference between excluded and non-excluded debt. So, if you do have questions or you think you know people who might have questions, feel free to put them forward.
Yeah, and feel free to reach out to me, and if I don't have the answers, I will obviously lean on my colleagues and our professional managers as well. We'll be leaning on them anyway.
Does anybody have any questions or comments on what's been presented so far?
I do actually, and that is just a suggestion to the newer members that some of the specialty terms that we use, specialized terms we use, are pretty well defined by the Association of Town Finance Committees, Municipal Finance Philosophy. So that's a resource you may want to avail yourself of.
Yeah, I'll find the link and send it to both Heather and Chris for the Association of Town Finance community meetings, because there's also again a whole orientation guide that includes that information. I don't know if it's actually posted, but at least you'll also be able to see if there's any kind of trainings coming up. I know that they've probably been doing a lot of Zoom type training. All right, so with that, if there's no other questions about that, are there any questions about anything? Okay, so I understand that basically, so we will be competing with the Board of Selectmen, who will most likely have, since they have Chief Marino now, they'll be having banana bread. So we'll see what we can when we finally meet live again, what we can provide for refreshment. With that, I'll start with, do we have any public comments from the committee? I see that somebody has logged on from the public, but I'll go with the committee first. Is there any public comment? Dave Passios.
Yes, I just wanted to mention if we could somewhere in the agendas going forward, and probably every week, have committee reports. I think we used to have that, and now that we've got committee assignments, it may be appropriate to have that actually listed as one of the agenda items. And I just wanted to give a quick update. Parks had an emergency meeting on, let's see, where are my notes? July 12th. That was prompted by some uncertainty as to whether or not the beach was going to be ready for opening on the next day based on some issues with the Board of Health. Ultimately, after a little more information was discussed on the 12th, it did go forward. There was a little bump in the road that Monday morning, but by Monday afternoon, the beach was open and has been open daily since. We'll be meeting again on the 28th to review what's gone on at the beach up to that point and see if there's any adjustments that need to be made or suggested by our activities person. And also, we have been heavily focused on the beach opening up to this point, and starting at the end of July, we'll be moving on to other things and reviewing the parks properties and setting 3 goals for the year. So that's basically a report on parks. TC Passios, our last meeting was postponed for a couple of weeks. We will be meeting next Wednesday, the 29th, and we're hoping to get some type of a report from the architects. They were given the green light, I believe, to get into the building and start the process of documenting the existing conditions and start the process of bringing a proposal forward. Thank you.
Peter?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo everybody else's comments at the beginning of the meeting, welcoming the new members. It's great to have a full committee here, and looking forward to working with everybody here. I've learned a tremendous amount over the course of the last 12 months as being a member of this committee. It's been a real pleasure to work with all of the members, and I hope that you, Chris, and Heather find the same satisfaction that I've drawn from this committee, and looking forward to working with you. I also wanted to add that with respect to the Parks Department, back during budget season, I had made sort of a bit of a terse remark to Jack about programming through the Parks Department, and obviously that came before all of the COVID-19 restrictions and a lot of delays to the plans that they had put in place to put together, some really cool programs for the summer. In addition to the town beach, they did turn on some programs, a coding camp, a youth basketball mini clinic, which my son participated in, and a variety of other things. They set up a website that you can link to through the town website, through the Parks Commission website. So I think that, with respect to programs, it's encouraging. Obviously, we've been very limited this year, but I'm really looking forward to seeing what can come from programming in the future. Now that we have people or a person who is responsible for creating and curating those programs.
John?
I just wanted to observe that the person who signed in or is monitoring the meeting by telephone had indicated on my screen at least that they were talking. So I didn't know if they were trying to participate or not.
Okay. Yeah, no, I see them. I figured I'd go around the horn and with the committee, and then come around to the phone. So, all right. If there's nothing else from members of the committee, we do have a caller on 7248. If that's your last 4, you're invited to make whatever comment you wanted to make at this time. If you would identify yourself, please.
Good evening. Hello?
Mr. Rogers.
Mr. Rogers.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you,
Can
Dave.
you hear me, Dave?
Hi, Dave.
Hi, this is Dave Rogers, 82 Highland Street. Thank you for taking my call. The first thing I'd like to do is to congratulate the committee for enticing Heather and Chris to join you, because they're 2 great people that will add a great deal to the committee. And thank you one and all for all that you do. Having said that, I want to comment on the debt issue. And I think that the synopsis that Pete gave was right on. But I would like to offer just a little bit of difference to that scenario, if I could. I jotted down some of the things that came to my mind that we as a town would be looking at or having to make decisions on. And they include the TC Passios design and whatever that entails, the Turkey Hill Middle School rehab and whatever that entails, the primary school issue to include what it would cost to tear it down or do whatever. And capital, excuse me, capital considerations that we have on hold. My suggestion is this, that we contact the financial advisor that has done a great job, I think, for the town, and present to that individual the following scenario. We would like to know how much we could reasonably borrow in terms of dollars, given what we have now and what we anticipate to be a reasonable extension of revenues. And the consideration that I have that was not mentioned, and I think it's a giant one, is that we have obviously budget uncertainties from the federal government and the state, and general costs for this pandemic issue that we're looking at right now and its effect on the town and its departments. And we have no idea what that will be. So it's fair, I think, to assume that the town budget will increase by some amount of money to take care of the pandemic issues. And once we sort that out, we, I think, would be in a better position to understand what we could reasonably afford to borrow, and then we would have a number that we could go by and say, okay, you can have vanilla, chocolate, or strawberry, but this is how much money we have, and people would have to make an informed decision, and we'd go from there. So those are my thoughts relative to the debt issue. And I'll just give you an editorial comment, which is worth what you're paying for it. Absolutely nothing. But I have really severe trepidations about the next 2, 4, 6 years and the effects financially on state, local, and federal government entities. And it translates to financial situations. So I think that it's a great thing that you're doing, but we have to be very, very careful.
Okay, I'm going to let Peter speak to that. Before I want to make sure that you don't get off the phone before he has a chance.
Dave, thanks for calling and commenting. I just want to make sure that just to kind of elaborate a little bit on what you described, because I think for the most part we're thinking the same way in terms of how we can present this to the town so that they have a sort of a clear-eyed view of what this stuff will cost and its effect on everything, or everything that we can conceivably imagine. But you mentioned capital considerations on hold. So these would be, are you thinking, like, for example, capital planning items that we've historically kicked the can for the last several years, we're likely to have to kick them again because we're going to need that money to stabilize the budget or whatever, and potentially bringing that into a debt package as well?
No, I am not initially. I think that part of what you said is absolutely right on what I was thinking about. There are some things that we will have to put on hold until we determine what the ancillary cost increases will be and how that equates to what our debt limits could be. And then, it could be, Pete, that we would have to look at the possibility of some other form of financing. But I'm really I'm not a big advocate for financing via short-term instruments by that 2, 5 years, whatever, for things that really we can't pay for as we go.
No, I appreciate that. I was just looking for clarification in terms of what we were going to. And I would also add that I think that, what we might eventually come up with here, if we stick to the timeline that we have in mind, Mr. Rogers' point is excellent, which is, let's say that we get a really good report together for special town meeting, I don't think any of us think that we're going to have a clear-eyed view of the economic conditions that we're facing for the next 2 or 3 years by a special town meeting in November. And so what we probably want to create to go along with that is, a financial model or a spreadsheet or something that we can continue to update over time and offer a comparison and a running dialogue as conditions change. Because I don't think that, if we throw out a scenario that, we're borrowing $40 million for Turkey Hill 5 years out at 3% interest, well, none of that is likely to come to fruition. So we're going to have to keep that kind of up to speed with however things shake out economically.
I couldn't agree more, and I categorize that, Pete, as a real moving target. I mean, it's you could make some assumptions and get data, and 18 months from now have a substantial change because of all the things that we all talked about. So
Yeah,
I really.
And one of my motivations here, Dave, is I want to be able to, in the short term, because I think we're going to be considering this TCP project, if not at special town meeting, probably in the spring. I want to consider that project with a clear-eyed view, or as clear a picture as we can possibly illustrate of the future. I don't think that it serves the town well to make that decision in a box without a clear understanding of the financial situation we may be encumbering ourselves with.
I couldn't agree more. And to that point, it brings up another point that I've thought a great deal about. If that, for whatever reason, comes to fruition, then we have 2 large vacancies in the center of town that really should be addressed. I mean, what's going to happen? There's carrying costs. There's all kinds of different things. And so there's a whole host of different things that we have to factor into this big financial issue.
Mr. Rogers,
Okay.
Dave Passios, that's why we included those 2 buildings in this process.
Mm-hmm.
Because, as an anticipated need is to try to come up with at least one possible scenario of reuse or repurpose of those 2 buildings and show a financial effect of some sort. It may not be the right one, but at least give an example of what one scenario would look like.
Who did this, Dave?
We're going to do that as part of this project.
Oh, I got you. Okay, yeah. The 3 of you that you discussed, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
John
that's correct.
and you and Pete. Yeah, good. All right, that's
Right.
fine. That's great. All right. Well, I've taken too much of your time. Thank you again for the opportunity, and welcome to a wonderful committee that's very important, and I'm sure you'll do a fantastic job.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
All right,
Thank you,
thanks,
Dave.
Thank you.
And actually, I think as my own public comment, aside from, I've already welcomed you guys, so I'm not going to welcome you again. You look like you've survived the first meeting fine. But I will say that I'm also keeping a close eye on the Board of Selectmen. I know that they're trying to find a way to keep better tabs on what committees. I think that the realization that committees tend to work at odds with each other because we don't necessarily have a clue what's coming down the pike with committees. If there's a way for us to, I don't know if they're going to go to the committee chair meetings like they had talked about before, trying to get a sense of what each committee is working on coming up. But if they did do something like that, I think it would be sweet, because I think that, like one of the things that discussion points out is that everything is related to something else, and everything makes something possible or impossible. And I'd even go so far as, I don't remember when it was, but and it probably wasn't all that long in the past, that the zoning board made a decision that hadn't been run by the recreation or the Parks Commission, and the Parks Commission opposed the decision that was made by the zoning board. So when it came up as a warrant article, it was kind of, who do you go with? The park says that we don't want this playground because we don't know anything about this playground and it's not up to the standards that we would take ownership of. But the zoning board made it part of an agreement for a build. So it's, basically it would be nice for a town this size, and yes, it's growing, but for a town this size to be able to keep track of, because it is run by so many different committees, it'll be good to have better communication going all the way around. But with that, unless anybody has anything else that they wanted to offer this evening, our next meeting is in 3 weeks, so the debt group will have plenty of time to get everything done. And we will be back on August 13th, and I will put on the agenda committee reports. I'm not going to expect a great deal on the 13th because I don't know what committees are currently meeting and what's going on, although I'm sure that the school committee will probably have a lot to be planning on coming up soon. If there's nothing else, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, John,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Heather,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Jay,
Aye.
and I for myself. Thank you very much. Have a great
Night, everybody.
Thank
Night,
you.
Night,
everybody.
everybody.
Take care.
You should have a